and welcome to Diplomatic Corner by Premium Times. My name is Chiamaka Okafor. As you know, Diplomatic Corner is where we engage with foreign diplomats from Nigeria, special envoys, foreign ministers from different countries to hear what their countries are doing in Nigeria and what Nigeria is also doing in their country. And today we're excited to be at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Nigeria, where we'll be speaking to the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar. He'll be speaking to us about different issues around Nigeria and its foreign image. As you know, the Foreign Minister is the leader of all diplomats from different countries, and so is Ambassador Tugar as well, the head of all diplomats from Nigeria. And today we'll be talking about a plethora of things. Please stay tuned, go nowhere as you enjoy this interview series. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Foreign Minister, for speaking with us today. This has been a very anticipated interview. We're excited that we're finally getting to do this. So I'll go right into it, and starting with one of the front burner issues. In fact, as of yesterday, the ministry was debunking misinformation or disinformation, if you like, around the issue of ambassadors from the country. Since the administration started, ambassadors were recalled, and we all have been looking forward to the list of new ambassadors representing the country. It's no news that ambassadors are very important for the image of every country. And here we are, 2 years, in fact, halfway into the first tenure of this administration, we have no ambassadors representing Nigeria anywhere. So what is the conversation around ambassadors? Why is it taking a lot of time to get these people working?
First of all, the administration started with major economic challenges, you will recall. And President Tinubu embarked on very serious macroeconomic reforms, removing subsidies, petroleum subsidy, electricity subsidy, and shifted the focus from subsidizing consumption to subsidizing production, which was much more important. So these sort of structural changes meant that there was a dearth of funds for other activities. And of course, we have, I think we're the number one ministry when it comes to the impact of foreign exchange and exchange rates, because you find that funds for the ministry are budgeted in Naira. Then they have to be converted to dollar to be sent out to our 109 missions. And then even at those missions, many of them have to convert the currency from dollar to the local currency before they're able to spend such currency. So there were even shortfalls because we had so many different exchange rates, and then we had huge fluctuations in the exchange rate as well. So this further compounded the issue of funding missions and also funding the sending out of ambassadors. And it's something that required time for there to be some stability, first and foremost on the exchange rate, and then secondly for the availability of funds, because President Tinubu was prioritizing the funds available and applying them accordingly. So this is why it's taken so long. At the same time, there is the process of ensuring that you select the right people to send to the right missions. And that has been in progress. We had an exercise over a year ago where we actually identified the names, sent it to Mr. President to consider, but it happened to be at a time when he was still grappling with these macroeconomic reforms. So from then till now, so many circumstances have changed, and there have been adjustments. But I assure you that these names will come out soon and will be sent to the Senate for screening. We have not just sat idle we've also been making our own preparations and adjustments. It's actually bought us time to prioritize in terms of what the deliverables are for the missions before the ambassadors are sent out. We've taken stock of existing agreements with countries, investment promotion and protection agreements, double taxation agreements, bilateral air services agreements, so that we would know exactly what is expected of the missions when these ambassadors go out. It's not cheap sending out ambassadors, because you have to cater. First of all, you have to buy their tickets, their wives, their kids. You have to ensure that the residences are renovated, they're available, vehicles, their allowances, and so forth. So for 109, at such a challenging time, it's not easy. But we've made do. We have sent out competent ambassadors here also, because you have to bear in mind also that over the years there has been a lopsidedness in terms of career ambassadors that go out to head missions, and the non-career, the political appointees. So we do have quite a number of competent career ambassadors that we've sent out to man quite a number of strategic missions. I'll give you an example with the gentleman that was the director of my office. He is a former deputy head of mission in the United Nations PAM mission in New York, one of the most challenging positions. He has worked as the head of the international operations department here. And of course, he has worked also as the director running my office. So he is currently the chargé d'affaires in Washington, D.C., overseeing Washington, D.C., as well as the UN PAM mission. So someone like that, you would not even realize that you're missing an ambassador. It's significant to have a substantive one there, because he presents his letters of credence. But in terms of the work being done, the work is being done.
Interesting. So, for want of a better word, categorically is the issue of money or funds that has kept the mobilization of ambassadors at bay. That's what you're saying.
Initially, yes.
So currently now what we're waiting for is for the National Assembly to assent to the names that have been sent.
The president will forward the names to the Senate for screening, and thereafter there will be requests we will assign ambassadors missions where they're supposed to be going to, and then there will be a request for agreement from the countries that they're supposed to go to, and once they receive the agreement, then they're ready to go.
So 2 questions there to wrap that conversation about ambassadors up will be, so as it is now, the president hasn't sent that list to the Senate yet?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And then you talked about career ambassadors. True. Over time, we've had politicians occupy the seats, and you've made mention that the ministry has taken time to nominate career ambassadors. Are you saying that the list is still a mixture of career and non-career ambassadors, or we've taken out the whole conversation of non-career ambassadors?
No, it always is. It's a mixture. In fact, even the list being contemplated has more political appointees than the career ambassadors.
Why is that?
Well, it's at the discretion of the president, and there are pros and cons. So they're all human beings from the same countries. Sometimes you have very competent career ambassadors, some not so competent, the same way that you have competent political appointees, and you have some that are not so competent. And by the way, I was a former political appointee as an ambassador. So,
okay, fair argument. Okay. So we've spoken about the issue of Nigerian missions and how funding fluctuation, the issue of currency exchange has affected the funding of the missions, basically. So how does this administration intend to approach or combat that issues in such a way that we don't have such issues recurring? It's not new with this administration, clearly, but it's happened over time where we hear missions don't have money, they can't even afford rent for the buildings they occupy in the various countries where they are. What are we doing as a people? What is this administration doing to see that such issues do not keep recurring?
Well, two things. First is ensuring stability in the exchange rate. I talked to you about fluctuations. This is why President Tinubu embarked on the macroeconomic reforms and closed up the multiple exchange rates that we had, Naira versus dollar, for instance. So now we have a single unitary exchange rate that allows for stability and predictability. The second is better management of resources by ensuring you send out competent heads of mission. And this is why, again, the selection process is taking longer than usual. And the third is what we did here in the ministry, where we presented a memo in the Federal Executive Council that has empowered us to take stock of all the properties that we have abroad, rationalize, where possible, go into public-private partnership arrangements so that some of these missions will be self-funding and will become more sustainable, and we're able to generate revenue from them as opposed to just allowing them to sit redundant. But here, care has to be taken because these properties are covered by the Vienna Conventions. So it's been stipulated clearly that these properties are meant to be used for diplomatic purposes. And each country has its own idiosyncrasies because they have their own domestic laws. So you have to ensure that you conform with their own laws, their own regulations in doing that. So you cannot, it can't be a wholesale approach. It has to, each country has to be looked at on a standalone basis, and this is what we've embarked on. This is what we're doing, so that we'll become more efficient, and so that the missions, where possible, can become self-funding, or at least cut down on the overheads.
How many of these missions do we have from your stock taking, and do we need all of these missions?
We have 109 missions, and that, when I say 109 missions, I mean full-fledged embassies and consulates. So the interesting thing is we actually have agitations for us to increase the number of missions, because you have a lot of Nigerians in the diaspora that are saying, look, we want you to open missions in our countries, in our cities, because there's so many of us here, and we require the consular services that the missions render, and we also want to use it to promote relations between our communities out there and Nigeria. So if you take the case of the United States, we have submissions and agitations for missions to be opened in Chicago, in Dallas, and so forth. Some are even saying we are prepared to fund the missions, but you know, the government has to be careful there, because you know, you can't just walk into that sort of thing without knowing clearly. You know, you need to do proper due diligence. And okay, so if you allow private individuals or private sector to be funding the existence of missions, what happens when their own interests run contrary to Nigeria's interests. So these are some of the challenges.
Yeah. In your estimation, do we need all of these 109 missions? And I ask because you find that some ambassadors accredited to Nigeria will be accredited to ECOWAS and to a few other countries. So they work from here and have maybe smaller offices that do not require a lot of funding in other countries they work with. So in your estimation, do we need all of these 109 missions?
For Nigeria's size, in terms of population, 220 million people, expected to become 400 million by the year 2050. For the size of its economy, the largest on the African continent. For its ambitions, and for the size of its diaspora, yes, we do. We do. And for the standing that Nigeria also has globally, because Nigerians don't appreciate the level of respect and the leadership role that is placed upon us on the global stage. We don't look at ourselves the same way that other countries at a national level look at us. So we must not abdicate our responsibilities. We should play that role. And for us to play that role effectively, we need those missions. And it's not that we don't have missions that cover several countries. We do. We do. So if you look at our mission in Iran, it covers most of those Asian republics. So you find that Iran, for instance, is covering Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and so forth, or Russia is covering those sort of missions, or covering the Baltic republics. So Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, for instance. You find our mission in Kuwait is the one really covering Bahrain and so on. So we have that as well. But even at that, there are demands for more.
Interesting. Going back to the ambassadors thing, do we expect, how soon are you giving us a deadline, or how soon are we expecting this to come to a close?
As I've often said, it's above my pay grade.
Okay.
That is Mr. President's decision. Mr. President is adept at timing and at making decisions based on temporality. So he will do the right thing at the right time.
Okay, I want to take you on the statement you just made about Nigeria's standing globally and how Nigerians do not appreciate how we are seen outside here, our global position, and how important a nation we are seen outside. But a lot of analysis, a lot of experts, analysts have spoken about how Nigeria has fallen in the Committee of Nations. We are not what we used to be anymore. And a lot of Nigerians share the sentiment too. I share the sentiment at some point too, especially when you travel across board, your green passport and the kind of treatment you receive at immigration. It begs answers to the question, where's the giant of Africa? So what would you say has happened to Nigeria? There are concerns that we're losing this position you talked about globally, the authority, the aura, the pride, give it whatever positive name you want to give. There are concerns that we're losing out on it totally. And then you see countries like Egypt, South Africa, Morocco coming up to top the chart more than we're doing.
Well, global politics should not simply be reduced to visa and immigration issues, or whether you are fast-tracked at an airport or not. Yes, it's tied to it, but that's not what it's all about. So when Nigeria fields candidates to international organizations, and you see the overwhelming support that Nigeria gets, and when others also are fielding candidates, or the country itself is competing for one thing or the other, and Nigeria is being lobbied to step in and support, because when Nigeria supports, a lot of countries look to go in the same direction, and not necessarily West African or African countries.
Yeah.
Because we have a reputation historically for doing the right thing and for our foreign policy being guided by moral precepts and ethical considerations. So when we stand and say we're fighting against racist regimes on the African continent, others know we're doing it not out of what we're going to get, but because we are doing it based on ethical considerations. And others respect us for that, for doing so. And when we also come out and say, this is our position on what is going on in Gaza, in Palestine, people know that Nigeria is not right next door to Gaza or Palestine. And we're doing it because we feel that is the right thing. Ditto when we say at the UN, we're voting against the violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity, which is not to say we don't get along with Russia, but we will withstand any pressure and do what is right. So these are the measurables, and this is what gives us that clout. So we must not reduce it simply to the fact that we're having visa or admission challenges. It's in part because there's so many of us, and it's also in part, regrettably, because we have bad eggs that go and do bad things in some of those countries. So it's something that we'll continue to work at, and as we improve, so would the admission and the visa challenges and all of that. And we've grown. Don't forget that there was a time, maybe you're too young to remember, I'm not, you would go to the United Kingdom, you don't need a visa.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so how many were we then? Maybe 50, 60 million? And now we're 220 million people.
So with that, would you say you say we're getting better, but now we're reminiscing on the past when we didn't need visas to go anywhere?
No, I'm not reminiscing. I'm practical about it. I'm pragmatic about it.
Okay.
So it would not make sense for 220 million people to just, especially since a considerable number of Nigerians go to the United Kingdom and don't come back, for it to just be open. So we have to be pragmatic about these things. And in fact, we should stay here, build our country to the point that it's others rushing to come to our country. Not that they don't rush, they still do.
But not like they used to.
To come to Nigeria? Of course they do. There are even more opportunities now because we're no longer a monocultural economy. So people are coming here looking for critical minerals. They're looking for lithium. They're looking for niobium. They're looking for tantalites. There are lots of opportunities here. People are coming because they've discovered Burna Boy and Davido. They love our music. People are coming for the food. People are coming for Nollywood. People are coming for the opportunities in the startup space because of the infrastructure that we have compared to other countries. So there are a lot of things that are attracting Nigerians, but we choose to focus on the negative. Sadly, you don't see other countries doing that. I was ambassador in Germany when war broke out in Ukraine, going back to this issue of embassies that you're talking about. And at the end of the day, there are only 3 countries, African countries, with embassies in Kiev. I know the number of African ambassadors that were rushing to speak to me, calling me on the phone, trying to come and meet with me physically to say, please, can you help us? We have students, we have citizens. We hear you're sending your 747s to evacuate Nigerians. can you please give me 1 seat, 2 seats, 3 seats, 10 seats?
Yeah.
And our policy then was no problem. Let's accommodate them. So even when we feel that, because some would counter argue and say, well, okay, why are we being, giving freebies to all these countries? What's in it for us? What's in it for us is that respect, that dignity when Nigeria comes out and says we are contesting for the African Union Peace and Security Council, and you see the unanimous support and votes that we get. Everybody just says, this one is Nigeria, let's just leave it. Or when we field Ambassador Bankole Adeoye and say we want him as Commissioner Political Affairs, Peace and Security. And first round, he clears everything. No contest.
But
so
wouldn't that
all of that is due to Nigeria's goodwill, and without spending a dime, I add. And we see how much other countries spend so much on these elections. So we take a lot of these things for granted. And when there's dispute amongst countries, a lot of the times people say, let's yield to Nigeria. Nigeria, you take a decision, do what is right. That is why you also see that in times of turmoil, the ECOWAS is always chaired by Nigeria.
But back to the question about Nigerians staying home to make things work. We always talk about enabling environment. What are the incentives that will keep Nigerians at home? Because Nigerians are economic migrants, they are social migrants and migrants for various reasons. And a lot of them will talk about how it's not conducive to live in Nigeria, for example. And there's been conversation about incentivizing staying at home and building the country. And that's why we all want to go to the UK or Canada or US, for example, because we believe that these countries are working. So how do we incentivize this home?
So now we're going to go into the realm of academics, because you have to look at the schools of thought on migration. So, and the push-pull factors, there's demand and supply. People would always move to where there's a demand for work, whether skilled or unskilled. It's been like that since the beginning of time. They would go for opportunities. You would also find that Adam Smith, one of the fathers of capitalism, if you will, always emphasized that apart from for capitalism to work, it's not just about the movement of goods and services, it's also the movement of people, of labor. So those factors of production come into play. But with those schools of thought, you have, for instance, the new economics of migration. That's a school of thought which says that, let me simplify it, you have communities in a country, and within that community, they take a decision to send one member abroad as a sort of investment, so that he would go there, generate capital that he will send back. Maybe it's a second-hand vehicle from, let's say, Germany, a Mercedes. He will send it back. They will sell it, and they will invest in a farm, or in buying a house, or or maybe use that vehicle for kabu, for instance, and then they will continue. So it's a family decision, it's a community decision. Sometimes you see villages putting money together to sponsor people from that community to go there. And of course, they have a bridgehead where they're going, because some people have gone before them. So these are the sort of trends. So Nigerians in a lot of places are leaving for those opportunities because of that new economics of migration. It's not because of necessarily because of conflict that Nigerians are moving to Europe. Because in my entire stay in Germany, I never came across a single Nigerian that left Nigeria because of Boko Haram, at the height of the Boko Haram crisis. Not a single person that I saw from the Bay States, for instance. So it's all of this coming into play, but this is being addressed by the government by providing. So this is what, for instance, the scheme that was conceived of by government to support investment in youth, in skills acquisition, and so forth. These are some of the things that brought it about, so that you provide that capital for people so that they may not have to leave. And you also have that reorientation to understand that when they go out there, they're not going for a better life. Maybe the life that they're living here is even better, because they have stringent conditions out there, and they don't want you to go and live in their country if you have not contributed to their social welfare system. Only those, it's like an investment, only those that whilst working have invested in that social welfare system can reap from it. Otherwise, they will deport you. But even at that, what this administration is also doing is using business process outsourcing, which is a very fast-growing area of our economy, to address that, so that even when they return our migrants, some of them have spent considerable time out there. So they're familiar with those places. So they can be utilized, they can find gainful employment in business process outsourcing, which is, for instance, customer care. You call a customer care of Apple. You are in the US, but the call is actually being handled by someone here who is speaking with an American accent. For instance, this is what India used to create so many jobs and so many opportunities, and this is what we're doing also.
Thank you. We'll take a quick water break, and when we return, we'll discuss ECOWAS and the ongoing issues on the African continent. Stay tuned. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is Diplomatic Corner Premium Times, and we have been speaking to Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, and we're talking about a lot of things. Right now, we're talking about ECOWAS. In the last 2 years, at least, it's been a roller coaster for ECOWAS, from Niger, the fallout, the Sahelian states, and all of that. And the question there is, Nigeria, as a big brother, like we all know how to be, has been at the forefront of all of these conversations. And the question there is, how do we intend to better manage the fallouts, the ongoing fallout? Because it looks like every day there's a new development that we need to handle.
Well, that's the way global politics has always been. Every day there is a new development.
Yes, sir.
But part of the problem also is to expect immediate results in diplomacy, in global politics. It doesn't work that way. It works on accretion. So it's gradual. It's not just overnight then you solve the problem. No. First and foremost, Nigeria has been saddled with the responsibility of leading ECOWAS. Like I said earlier, in times of turmoil or uncertainty, Nigeria is given the lead. And Nigeria is doing the right thing. It's doing the responsible thing. You can see how President Tinubu sort of calmed things down, pushed for the removal of the comprehensive jurisdictional sanctions that were imposed on Niger, for instance. And the engagement goes on, particularly with Niger, because what people don't realize is you have to look beyond the rhetoric. The Nigerian-Niger Joint Commission still continues, still functions. The Kano-Marai rail project still continues. Work is still ongoing. We continue to make diplomatic efforts to address the concerns of the two countries. Okay? And ECOWAS, under President Tinubu's leadership, has still given the three countries the option of remaining in ECOWAS extended for another 6 months. These are all conciliatory efforts, if you will, that have been made, which clearly show that Nigeria and ECOWAS are still placing emphasis on the community, on people, because they don't want the people to suffer. But at the end of the day, these three countries are landlocked countries. So what is going on in the rest of ECOWAS is of so much benefit to those countries. ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, the SIGMAT scheme that allows for easier movement of containers, of goods and services, the Abidjan-Lagos corridor that is being developed. And now we even have the African Atlantic gas pipeline that is to deliver Nigerian gas and gas from Ghana and in the future Sierra Leone to Morocco and is linked to the Maghreb line. So these are all things that are happening that are creating opportunities that the other countries are benefiting from. And don't forget that the ECOWAS countries, as they stand now, even if AES leave, are the littoral states. And there are more sort of opportunities for trade by sea, by land, for littoral states. So really, you know, it's something we see as a bump in the road, and something that even if currently those countries decide to leave, it doesn't mean that in the future their leadership would maintain the same position.
So not to cut you, but because we're running out of time, the next question will be, what happens to the entire ECOWAS integration goal when AES happens, when the states do not come back to ECOWAS?
It still happens. It just happens without them. And don't forget that the principle of complementarity and subsidiarity still exists with the African Union, with the United Nations. This is how global politics is played. So when we field candidates, when we vie for positions as a country, and ECOWAS says, in our region, this is who we're presenting, this is the country we're presenting, nobody is going to listen to three countries or one country that decides, I'm going to go it alone. So you lose out. You snooze, you lose. That's the way.
What's Nigeria's position on the crisis in the DRC and Sudan?
DRC, it was actually Nigeria that was agitating for a resolution of the crisis in the African Union Peace and Security Council. Don't forget that Nigeria is the only African country with a near permanent seat in the Peace and Security Council. We've been there, and again, it's because of ECOWAS, because in our region, we have been given that responsibility, go and represent us. So Nigeria is doing a lot of work in that Peace and Security Council to bring that about, to resolve that. Importantly, it was President Tinubu that gave the go-ahead for the African Union to co-opt President Obasanjo as one of the individuals, the leading figures to resolve the crisis. And then there has been a merging of the processes, the two processes. The Nairobi process and what was the other one? The Kinshasa process. Sorry, not Kinshasa. Kampala process.
Yunisa, can you quickly speak to the Sudan issue?
So with Sudan, again, what we've been doing is we have, of course, been pursuing it through the African Union and the Peace and Security Council, where we continue to participate and perform and bring up solutions, propose solutions. We have also been tackling it bilaterally. And in this case, we have been working, for instance, with some of the non-partisan groups and initiatives. For instance, former Prime Minister Hamdok, we've been engaging with him, and President Tinubu has also been behind the scenes engaging with both sides. But what we are careful about is not being co-opted into processes that have already been tainted, because those that have taken the lead or those that have gotten involved have somehow allowed themselves to become subsumed by taking sides or the perception of having taken sides. So Nigeria still maintains that, and we're being very careful not to fall into that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for this interview.